They were trained to track bears, rescue hikers, and protect the wilderness, but nothing prepared them for what they saw. These are the stories national park rangers were told never to share. Until now. Chapter 1. The silence of the forest isn't always peaceful, not just because it's peaceful but because it demands it. If you've ever stood alone in the heart of a national park, surrounded by miles of forest in every direction, you know the feeling. The silence isn't comforting. It's heavy. It feels like you're being watched, even when you're alone, quietly, anonymously, often only after they've retired. There's something about deep wilderness that makes people go quiet. I just know it was standing on two legs, and it wanted me to see it. Each story comes from someone who's worked in or around U.S. national parks. Their names, when shared, have been changed to protect their identities, not because they're afraid of ridicule but because in some cases they've been warned to stay quiet. Some even describe seeing what looks like a massive dog or wolf on two legs. Others say they were reassigned or pressured into silence, and a few just vanished from public view, always at night, always just far enough away that it's hard to make sense of, but close enough to feel wrong. For most people, that feeling. This isn't about claiming Dogman is real beyond a doubt. It's about listening to the people who've seen something they can't explain and asking why no one seems willing to talk about it. Not stories from tourists or campers who scared themselves in the dark. These are stories from trained professionals, people who know what bears look like. Some describe hearing strange sounds. Others note claw marks on trees far too high for a bear. But most of these details never make it into the official reports. They're written off, ignored, or dismissed as irrelevant. People who can tell mountain lion tracks from wolf prints. These cases usually follow odd patterns. The person disappears quickly without making a sound. But before we move on, take a moment to consider this. No blood, no signs of struggle. Often, their clothes or gear are found in places that make no sense. People who are on quick to jump to wild conclusions because their job depends on staying calm and rational. They chalk it up to nerves, brush it off, and go back to enjoying their hike. But for the people who work in these places, park rangers, search and rescue teams, forest maintenance crews, that feeling isn't a passing shadow. It stays, and sometimes it becomes something more. No one's sure where it comes from. Some say it's a legend rooted in Native American folklore. Others say it's a modern invention. But for the people who claim to have seen it, there's nothing legendary about it. It's real, and it's terrifying. Over the past few years, more and more stories have surfaced from those who've spent decades inside America's most remote parks. And yet, some of them are speaking out. Their stories are remarkably similar. Strange sounds in the woods, heavy footsteps pacing just out of sight, glowing eyes in the trees, and tall figures walking upright where no human should be. There's one term that keeps coming up: Dogman, a creature some describe as a werewolf, others as a One former ranger said it best: "I've tracked bears, I've seen mountain lions, but I don't even have a name for it." In this video, we're going to walk through some of these testimonies. Some have lost their jobs. Now, we're not here to sensationalize or prove anything. Let's start with a basic truth. The U.S. National Park System has a missing persons problem. You may have heard of the missing 411 cases incidents, where hikers vanish without a trace, often under strange circumstances. In many of those cases, search and rescue teams report feeling uneasy. And that brings us to the central question: what are park rangers seeing that they're not allowed to talk about? In the next chapter, we'll dive into one of the earliest accounts: a ranger on night patrol in the Smoky Mountains, who saw something that changed how he viewed the forest forever. If these parks really are home to something we don't understand, why is it being kept quiet? Who benefits from the silence? And most importantly, how many more people need to disappear before we start asking the hard questions? Chapter 2. The first report. Deep in the Smoky Mountains, it started like any other late shift. Ranger Tom, whose full name we won't share here, was on patrol deep in the Great Smoky Mountains. It was the kind of night that felt like it was holding its breath, quiet, but not peaceful. You could hear the wind shift through the trees, but nothing else. No owls, no insects, not even the usual rustling of small animals moving through underbrush. Tom had been working in the park for over 15 years. He'd seen it all. Lost hikers, injured climbers, panicked tourists, convinced they were being followed by mountain lions. He was known as the calm wonder guy who could find his way out of anything and never lost his head. But that night, something changed. It was just after 2 a.m. when he came upon a campsite that hadn't been there earlier that day. No signs of a struggle, just chaos. He said the creature didn't move. It just watched him, like it was studying him. And silence. He got in his vehicle and drove straight back to the ranger station. Not unusual people sometimes arrive late, pitched tents where they shouldn't. I also knew if I stood there much longer, it might come closer. It was like staring at something that understood I was afraid and liked it. Not because he was scared of sounding crazy, but because, when he mentioned it to his supervisor, the response was immediate and firm. But what struck him was how wrecked it looked. The fire pit was torn apart. A cooler had been crushed like it had been stomped. And the tent, and it wasn't a bear, ripped down the side like it had been slashed with claws. That's where we found it. His writing was simple, clear, and detailed. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He just wanted to say it out loud. Once, always describing the same figure. Tall, canine, bipedal watching. Was it a one-time event? A strange anomaly? Hikers that vanish without explanation. Campers who are never found. And the odd, often overlooked clues they leave behind. Or was it a piece of a much larger puzzle? There were no campers in sight. It's one of the most visited national parks in the US. Millions of people pass through it every year. And yet, deep within those trees, there are places where cell service disappears, where rescue teams have trouble reaching, where things can happen. And no one ever hears about it. No blood. Tom radioed it in, but as he waited for a response, he felt it. A few other rangers admitted they'd seen something strange in that part of the park too. None of them had reported it officially. One even told him, that thing we talked about in the last chapter, that feeling of being watched. He said it came over him all at once. The hairs on his arms stood up. His instincts, the ones honed from years of experience, told him to leave. Now. But just as he turned to walk back to his vehicle, he heard a branch snap. Not a twig, a thick branch. Something heavy had stepped on it. Slowly, carefully. Tom turned on his flashlight and swept the beam across the tree line. That's when he saw it. It stood upright into legs but had the head and body shape of a large dog or wolf. The fur was dark, almost black, and its shoulders were broad, like a human's. It was tall, at least 7 feet, maybe more, and the eyes reflected the flashlight in a way no normal animals would. Red, almost glowing, about 30 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree, was something that didn't belong. Tom froze. He described the moment like this. I knew if I ran, it would follow. After what felt like minutes but was probably only seconds, the creature stepped back into the trees and vanished. Tom didn't chase it. He didn't call for backup. And here's the part that matters. He didn't file a full report. We don't log bear sightings unless there's a threat. Just leave it out. But Tom knew what he saw. In the days that followed, he quietly asked around. You learn fast what you're allowed to talk about and what you're not. Tom eventually transferred to a smaller, less remote park. He never saw the creature again, but he never forgot it. Years later, after retiring, he shared his story online anonymously on a forum dedicated to cryptid encounters. And his wasn't the only story. Since his post, others have chimed in with similar experiences. Always in remote parts of national forests, always at night. The Great Smoky Mountains may be beautiful, but they're also dense. What did Tom see that night? In the next chapter, we're going to look at that puzzle by examining the cases that keep piling up. Because when you start connecting the dots, you realize something doesn't add up. And the deeper you go into the woods, the stranger the silence becomes. Chapter 3. Disappearances that don't add up. There are over 400 million acres of national parks and protected wilderness in the United States. They're beautiful, wild, and more often than we like to admit, completely unforgiving. People disappear in them all the time. Most cases are explainable, the ones that don't make sense. A hiker gets lost, a camper slips and falls. Nature is harsh, and search and rescue teams are trained for exactly that. But then there are the other cases. In recent years, a growing number of investigators, former law enforcement officers, and researchers have noticed something strange happening in America's parks. Clusters of missing persons cases with uncanny patterns. These aren't ordinary disappearances. They follow rules if you know what to look for. Let's talk about a few of them. Case 1. The Vanishing Boy, Oregon. 2006, a 6-year-old boy was walking just a few feet ahead of his parents on a trail near Crater Lake. When asked what happened, he said he heard a growl behind him, turned around and everything went black. He woke up in the woods, unsure how he got there. There were no other people around, no steep cliffs, no water nearby, no head injury. Hundreds of similar reports exist. Former police detective David Paulides created the Missing 411 project to document these cases. What he found was alarming. No memory loss disorder, no drugs in his system. Sometimes on top of rocks, or in places the missing person couldn't possibly reach on foot. 1 second he was there, and the next, he was gone. His parents searched the area screaming his name. Rangers arrived within hours. Hundreds joined the search. They'd sit down and whine instead. No torn clothing, no signs of an animal attack. His footprints just stopped. But the sightings do line up. In multiple Missing 411 clusters, witnesses have reported seeing large, upright canine creatures in the area days or hours before someone vanished. Howls that don't match any known species, and massive tracks far too large to belong to a normal wolf or coyote. They never found a body. No tracks. The official explanation: unknown causes. Unofficially, some rangers say the area is known for strange sounds at night and that search dogs refuse to go into certain parts of the forest. Wolves do it. Bears do it. They'll watch their prey first, see how it moves, learn its weaknesses. Not all the time, but when it does, people go missing. The weird part is, it doesn't always take them. Sometimes, it just watch it. The National Park Service doesn't maintain a centralized database of missing persons in parks. Shocking, considering how many people go missing each year. But the fact remains, they don't even keep track of how many never come back. Case 2. The Disoriented Hiker, Colorado. 2013, a solo backpacker was found wandering miles off trail, barefoot, clothes torn. Doctors said he was dehydrated, but otherwise fine. We may not be at the top of the food chain after all. His story is one of the most detailed and chilling we've found. He told friends later that something followed him for days. Something big, that he only saw once standing between the trees, hunched forward, eyes glowing. He doesn't hike alone anymore. These are just 2 examples, but they're not isolated. People vanish quickly, often after saying they feel weird or watched. Search dogs either can find a scent trail or stop at a certain point and refuse to continue. Bodies, when found, are often placed in areas already searched. Some victims are found without their shoes or with clothes folded neatly nearby, even in freezing temperatures. What could possibly cause patterns like that? Theories range from the rationale to the supernatural: hypothermia, disorientation, wild animal attacks. But none of these fully explain the details. That's where Dogman enters the conversation. Now, let us be clear. No one is claiming Dogman is responsible for all or even most of these cases. Rangers whisper about claw marks found high on tree trunks. One park employee, who asked to remain anonymous, said this: "It's like something's hunting," and that raises another unsettling possibility. What if the disappearances are intentional? What if the creature, whatever it is choosing when to strike and when to just observe? In predator behavior, this is called testing boundaries. If something out there is doing the same to humans, the government response, or lack of it. One of the strangest parts of all this is how little official acknowledgement there is. When asked directly, NPS has said there's no need for a database because most people are found. Is it in budget issues or something deeper? Some believe the truth is being quietly buried because if the public knew just how often people vanish without a trace, they might stop visiting, or worse, they might start asking the wrong questions. In the next chapter, we'll hear from a retired ranger who had a face-to-face encounter with a creature that walks like a man. But clearly, because it's not just about missing people anymore, It's about what's still out there, watching. Chapter 4. The creature that walked like a man. Some encounters leave marks, not on the body but on the mind, the kind that never quite fade, even with time. This next story comes from a retired ranger named Bill. He worked for the National Park Service for nearly 30 years, most of it in Oregon. The air was cool, but dry. His flashlight cut a narrow path through the trees. He'd walked that route 100 times, and while he agreed to share his story, he insisted his real name not be used. You'll understand why soon. Bill's encounter happened in the summer of 1999. He was working night patrol along a remote part of the Willamette National Forest. His task was routine check the campsite registry, make sure no one was breaking fire rules, and report any signs of wildlife activity that might pose danger to hikers. Heavy footsteps, not the fast thump-thump of a deer or the loping shuffle of a bear. These were even, slow, 2 steps at a time. Something was walking upright, and it was getting closer. It was near midnight, but that night was different. Bill says it started with a low sound, almost like a growl, but not from a dog. It was deeper, slower, almost deliberate. It wasn't threatening at first, just strange, upright ears, eyes that glowed bright orange-red in the flashlight beam. He paused, scanned the area, nothing, and disappeared. Then came the snapping of branches. When he finally came to his senses, he walked slowly, carefully back to his truck. He didn't run. He said it felt like if he ran, it would follow. That was the end of the conversation. It just stood there, breathing slowly, its chest rising and falling like it wasn't surprised to see him. Almost it was expecting him. To his surprise, one of them nodded and said, "Not then, not to anyone for years." I saw it too. A few had notes scrawled in the margins. Different place, same build. He did the right thing, not chasing it. He raised his flashlight and aimed it toward the noise. That's when he saw it. Carefully, quietly. And what he found shocked him. Its shape was all wrong for a man. Broad chest, long arms, massive legs, but it wasn't a bear either. Somewhere, enough to keep these stories off the record. It stood straight up, balanced on 2 feet, like a person, but its head was unmistakably canine. They seemed curious. No fur samples, no clear tracks, just sightings and silence. They appear randomly, and they leave no obvious trace. Calculated, selective. They watch more than they attack. Real beings that live deep in the wilderness, far from human settlements but not far enough. Roughly 30 feet away stood a tall, muscular figure, covered in dark fur. Others believe they're some kind of cryptid, like Bigfoot but more aggressive, more aware. He couldn't move, couldn't think. The thing didn't snarl or charge. A long snout. Creatures that can appear and vanish at will. That could explain the lack of evidence and why so many rangers feel paralyzed when they see them. But the people making sure we never hear about them. From vanishing evidence to silenced rangers, you'll see why what's most frightening might not be the creatures themselves. And it was looking right at him. Bill said time seemed to freeze. And then it did something that still gives him nightmares. It tilted its head. Not because I'm scared, but because I know I'm not the only one out there. Not like an animal trying to figure something out, but like a person mocking, curious, even amused. Then it slowly stepped backward into the tree line. Bill stayed there, frozen for at least another minute. This separates them from known animals like bears, which only stand on 2 legs briefly, and he wasn't sure if he'd make it out if it did. Back at the ranger station, he told his supervisor that he'd heard a bear near campsite 14 and was going to mark it off limits for a few days. He didn't mention the creature. It wasn't until he retired that he finally spoke about it to a small group of other rangers over drinks. Yeah, that was when Bill realized something. He wasn't the only one. He started digging. There were reports, internal, unofficial ones, describing similar encounters across several parks. Some were dismissed as pranks, others were buried. Do not discuss further. Close file. Refer to wildlife control. Redacted. Bill believes these creatures are real, not myths, not hallucinations, and he believes the Park Service knows. Maybe not everyone at the top, but someone. So what are these creatures? Let us break it down based on the details from Bill's story and others like it. bipedal movement. They walk upright like humans. Canine features, long snout, sharp ears, thick fur, clearly not primates or ape-like. Height and build. Most witnesses estimate between 6.5 to 8 feet tall. Muscular, intimidating, glowing eyes, seen mostly at night, with red or orange eye shine. Intelligence. They don't behave like wild animals. Skeptics argue that this sounds like a werewolf story, but these creatures aren't tied to full moons or folklore rituals. Some call them a few even think they're shapeshifters, beings that exist between the physical and spiritual world. Bill, for his part, doesn't try to label it. He just knows what he saw, and he says it changed how he views the forest forever. He used to think of the woods as a peaceful place, a refuge. Now, he says, it's still beautiful, but there are places I won't walk anymore. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about why so few stories like Bill's ever reached the public and how the Park Service seems to have a quiet policy of keeping things hidden. Chapter 5. The Ranger Who Regretted Reporting. It was supposed to be just another summer in the Great Smoky Mountains. Ranger Daniel Whitaker had worked in the Park Service for over a decade. Food half-cooked on the grill, backpacks left behind, but no people. It didn't feel right. Then he found something even stranger: deep footprints near the edge of the clearing. Not boot prints, barefoot, and not human. The tracks were elongated, clawed at the tips, and spaced wide apart. Whatever made them was big, very big. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no animal tracks. Just gone, vanished into the trees. He didn't go further. Something about the air changed. It was dead quiet. No birds, no wind, just silence, and the feeling that he wasn't alone. He'd seen it all: lost hikers, bear encounters, even a few hoaxes pulled by thrill-seeking campers. But nothing prepared him for what he saw in July of 2018. And nothing could prepared him for what happened after he reported it, because I think someone else is going to get hurt, and no one's telling the truth. Multiple former rangers, some anonymous, have made similar claims, being warned, silenced, or reassigned after reporting strange incidents. One even described seeing a creature just outside his station late one night. Tall, canine, glowing eyes, walking upright. It didn't flee when spotted, it watched. Daniel was patrolling a remote section of the backcountry when he noticed something unusual. Still warm ashes in the fire pit, but the consistency of the accounts, especially from rangers across different parks, is difficult to ignore. These are men and women trained to observe, to report accurately, to stay calm in emergencies. They aren't seeking fame. Many of them come forward anonymously, years later, often shaken, reluctant, and fearful of backlash. At first, he suspected a bear, but there were no signs of a break-in, no claw marks, no dragged gear. It was about realizing something deeper, that if these creatures, Dogman, werewolves, or whatever name you give them, are real, then someone knows. And they're going to great lengths to keep it hidden. And you hear something moving that shouldn't be. Don't follow it. Don't look for answers. Because if you see what I saw, you may wish you hadn't. 2 days later, a pair of federal agents showed up. Reports filed, then removed from record. Witnesses told they imagined it. Federal agents, or unmarked officials stepping in, not by nature, but by people who have a reason to keep them that way. Cases going cold, files sealed. Just the memory of those tracks, the missing hikers who were never found, and the silence that followed. He said those weren't the only strange tracks he'd seen in the park, that rangers often found clawed prints, dead animals with no clear wounds, or trees clawed 10 feet high, scratched far above what any bear could reach. Not Park Service, not local law. They wore suits, carried no identification, and asked him not to speak of the incident again. Daniel followed the tracks for nearly half a mile until they disappeared into a ravine. That night, he filed a report. He included everything: abandoned camp, missing hikers, the tracks. He even sketched what he saw. They told me I'd made a mistake, Daniel later said, that I was under stress, misremembering things, his pension, his family, a thinly veiled threat. He was stunned. For reporting a possible missing persons case, he was being silenced. But I know what I saw. When he pressed further, they reminded him of his job. Daniel didn't talk about it again publicly for years, but in a private interview recorded anonymously, he shared more. He believed he'd encountered something real that night, something living in the forests, just outside what we consider possible. When asked why he was coming forward now, he said, "Daniel's story isn't the only one like it. These are not wild internet stories. There's a pattern." Skeptics argue that these are simply urban legends, misidentifications, hoaxes, or the product of long hours alone in the woods. Daniel's regret wasn't just about being silenced. Why? Are they dangerous? Being studied? Protected? Daniel didn't have the answers. He ended his interview with a warning. If you're out there, deep in the woods, in the stillness of the forest, some truths are buried, and sometimes the most terrifying part is not what's out there. It's who's making sure we never find out. Chapter 6. A howl that shouldn't exist. It happened near Glacier National Park. Not to a hiker, not to a camper, but to a wildlife biologist, Dr. Meredith Shaw. She wasn't there chasing stories or hunting legends. She was doing her job, tracking gray wolves as part of a conservation study. It was quiet at first, just the wind and her breath. Then, from across the valley, a long, rising call echoed through the trees. At first, she thought it was a wolf, but it shifted midway to deep, then too loud. The pitch dropped unnaturally. It didn't sound like any canid she had ever recorded. She didn't expect to find anything, but she did. Meredith had worked with wolves for over 15 years. She knew their calls, their packs, their behaviors. She knew their sound from miles away. In the dirt, she found impressions, not paw prints, not boots. When she went to her supervisor, she was told her access had been revoked due to suspicious activity. She was moved off the wolf study, transferred to desk work. No explanation, no hearing. Something that sounds ... curious, intelligent, predatory, something in between, like an enormous foot. But upright, she still has it. Listened again, because I think what I heard that night wasn't an animal. It was something pretending to be one, and it's learning. She brought it back to her team. Most were intrigued. A few were nervous. One tracker even claimed he found a GPS collar stripped clean from a wolf carcass like it had been unbuckled. One colleague, an older field tech, took her aside and said, "You should stop now, before they show up." Like hearing a voice trying to sound like a wolf, but missing some crucial element. Too big, too human, too aware. Her hands began to tremble. But on a cold October night in 2021, she heard something that didn't fit. She was alone, perched on a ridge, using a parabolic microphone to record distant howls. She played it back. Others believe it's the result of a classified experiment. Something escaped, but Meredith doesn't care about the origin. It was wrong. Not just unusual, wrong in a way that hit something primal in her gut. She stayed the night in her field tent, trying to rationalize it. Wolves can change pitch. Echoes can distort. It was probably too overlapping. Call something normal, explainable, but she couldn't sleep. The next day, she hiked down to the spot where the sound had originated. A large clearing, trees bent, not broken, not from wind or storm, from something heavy moving through them. She documented everything: photos, measurements, audio recordings, but nothing I've heard, not even in my wildest nightmares, ever sounded like that thing. She laughed it off. Then her files started disappearing. The hard drive she used for backups wiped. Her camera's SD card corrupted. Her research database account was suddenly locked. Within 2 weeks, her project was reassigned. She kept one copy of the audio on a hidden thumb drive. In an anonymous interview, she played the sound. It doesn't just chill you, it paralyzes you. It starts like a normal wolf howl, but then shifts. Something takes over. When asked why she came forward, Meredith said, "Other wildlife researchers in the area have since reported strange things disappearing: bait stations, cameras torn from trees, samples going missing. Officially, none of this is acknowledged. Unofficially, there are whispers about something watching, mimicking, adapting. Some think it's a cryptid, something ancient, hiding in the deep woods. She just wants people to know the truth. We are no longer the top predator in the forest. She believes the creature, whatever it is, lets itself be heard, that it chooses when to howl, who to scare, and when to disappear, because it doesn't want to be found. He wants to remind you, you are not alone out there, and the moment you stop believing in monsters, that's when it's as Meredith put it in her final words. I spent my life studying wolves, so if you're ever deep in the woods and you hear a howl that sounds almost right. Round Chapter 7. What rangers whisper when no one's around. This final chapter isn't about one specific sighting. It's about a pattern, something unspoken but deeply felt. A quiet truth passed between rangers behind closed doors, around late-night fires, or shared in hushed tones after a few too many drinks. The National Park Service is full of professionals. Most of them don't scare easily. They've dealt with grizzlies, mountain lions, wildfires, and people doing very stupid things in remote places. But even among these hardened individuals, there's something they won't talk about unless you really push. Dogman, or, as some call it, the thing in the trees. Rangers who've worked in deep forest parks, places like Olympic Glacier, the Smokies, or parts of the Ozarks, describe an unease that doesn't come from anything they can name. The birds are singing, the leaves are rustling, everything's normal. Then, in an instant, everything stops. High off the ground, far from any known trails, always just out of reach. One veteran ranger claimed he saw something pacing him for 2 miles during a routine solo patrol. He never saw it clearly, but he could hear it. Footsteps in sync with his own. Breathing that didn't match his rhythm. Dead silent. No wind. Some parks even have unofficial no-go zones, places where radios die, GPS glitches, and rangers won't camp overnight unless ordered to. Another swears the thermal drones picked up something bipedal, moving at speeds no human should be able to. People who can tell a bear from a bobcat from a person in a costume. When they check the area, no tracks, no sign of wildlife, just the smell, wet fur and something else. ... something rotten. Hikers had heard what sounded like a woman crying for help. The ranger went out, thinking it was an injured camper, but the voice kept moving. Every time he got closer, it moved farther away. No bugs, no birds. That's why files disappear. That's why some sightings never make it into the public system. Just that crushing, unnatural stillness. Don't admit to something that could make people stop visiting parks. After all, tourism funds everything. It's not fear of an animal or a storm. It's a presence. They say the forest sometimes just changes. If encountered, maintain distance. Radio silence may be necessary. These are not standard wildlife interactions. You're walking a trail you've patrolled 100 times, and you know something is watching you. Rangers have seen helicopters arrive in remote zones after bizarre reports. They never find out what those teams were looking for. Many rangers report seeing eye-sheen red or amber in places where no normal animal would be. He said the thing never attacked. We have to face the fact that we are not in control. Never got closer. Something else still rules, but it made sure he knew it was there. A younger ranger, stationed in the Smoky Mountains, once responded to a call about screaming deep in the backcountry. Eventually, it stopped. He found no one, but when he turned back, he realized something had followed him the entire way. Otan had left large, barefoot tracks in the mud. Beside his own. The Park Service doesn't officially investigate Dogman reports. There's no form for it, no training manual. But off the record, these stories are known. These aren't just campfire tales. These are from trained observers, people who know the land, and they're afraid. Afraid not just of what the creature might be, of why it's being ignored. Some believe there's an unofficial rule, don't stir panic, but others think it goes deeper, that the government knows that these creatures have been seen before, photographed, maybe even captured and covered up. There are even rumors of specialized response teams, not normal rangers, but heavily armed Unisu show up when something really strange happens. But they all say the same thing. After those visits, the woods feel quieter. Too quiet. In one internal memo leaked anonymously years ago, a note, allegedly from a high-ranking park administrator, read, "Do not engage." It was labeled as referring to Category X disturbances. That category doesn't exist on public records. So here's the question. Why do so many people, from so many different parts of the country, describe the same creature, tall, bipedal, dog-like, impossibly fast, with glowing eyes and an unnatural howl? Why do so many experienced strangers, hardened, skeptical people refuse to walk certain trails alone? And why does no one officially acknowledge it? Maybe it's because some things are better left alone. Or maybe it's because the moment we name it, that in the vast, dark forests of North America. So next time you're camping in the woods and everything goes quiet, remember, you're not imagining it. And if you hear a low growl just beyond the light of your fire, don't look, don't run. Just pray it's not your turn.